All right, warm welcome to everyone, to each of our participants. Thank you for joining us on this discussion. We start with a short 8-minute delay, but we are fortunate enough today to have amongst us, and we can welcome among us Zsolt Németh, who is actually a recurring guest and one of the largest and biggest champion of the Gombaszeg summer camp, and he's among the few Hungarian parliamentarian representatives who has been consistently re-elected since 1990. So he's a member of the Hungarian National Assembly, where he currently chairs the Foreign Affairs Committee within the Hungarian National Assembly. So he's an old friend of ours, but also this year we are joined by a fresh face, Miroslav Vlachovsky, who is among the most senior diplomats this country has. He's a former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he also served as the ambassador of Slovakia to the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. So he's a diplomat with 30 years of experience in both government and international organizations. We had a very similar session last year when we were joined by Miriam Lexman. She's a member of the European Parliament. It was a quite a deep dive into the Central Europe's position within the EU. But I believe a lot has happened over over the last year, giving us a lot of content to digest in the next hour and a half or so. Hungary has just taken over the presidency of the European Union Council, with the Prime Minister trying to leverage this position to embark on a grand diplomatic tour from Kyiv to Moscow and from Beijing to Washington, D.C. Both Poland and Slovakia just had elections recently that changed governments, and the old new Slovak leadership with Prime Minister Robert Fico at the helm appears to embrace many of the Hungarian government's official position when it comes to Ukraine or when it comes to the European Union. We also had European parliamentary elections. There was a remarkable shift in the European Parliament, which has strengthened the position of the right. Many would claim that it strengthened the position of the Putin-appeasing parties. When it comes to the war of Ukraine, the situation has all but become a stalemate, and even though Western support for the country has been steady, the question of whether this is the right moment to seek an acceptable settlement with Russia has come to the fore. But the question, which brings the question to the table, whether what can be considered an acceptable settlement and whether we have any right to push Ukraine into negotiations with Russia, or whether is there any kind of clear vision on how to secure Ukraine's long-term security. And of course, the wild card in all of this is a potential second Trump presidency, whose return to power triggers fears that the US could actually throw Ukraine under the bus, or as Prime Minister Orbán would say, he would be the one solving the war between Russia and Ukraine overnight, under 24 hours. So I think the best would be to address the issue of the Hungarian presidency of the European Council. What are the priorities, Zsolt, of the Hungarian government? What are the objectives that trying to accomplish under such a short 6-month time frame, which is not a lot of time in terms of politics in general? So the word is yours.
Thank you very much, Balázs. Good morning, everybody. Congratulations to your waking up in due course. And I would like to express my happiness that I can be here again after so many years, and also to express this gratitude to Miroslav Vlachovsky, who is an old friend of mine. From the early 90s, we know each other from not from diplomacy and not from official relations, but also we had short trousers when we got to know each other. So our relationship fits this environment. And Balázs, you forgot to mention that Mr. Vlahovsky is now plays a very important role as the driving engine of Globsec, which is a major international think tank in Slovakia, which is extremely important, internationally recognized think tank of the country. About the Hungarian presidency priorities, you know, it was recently the European elections which has resulted in a quite important change in the European political life. These days, these moments, the European Parliament is just sitting, voting. Today, Thursday, in the end of the day, we will see if Ursula von der Leyen gets or not gets in these minutes, okay, at one, great. So we will see these decisions and the agreement in among the European parliamentary forces can be traced back. Also, in the past couple of weeks, since the European elections, we have experienced the so-called peace mission of Prime Minister Orbán, visiting Kiev, then visiting Moscow, and before Washington, he also visited Beijing, and many other important centers of the world. Today he is in London. The European political community, the 46 member states of the European political community on the level of heads of states and government convened in London, and we will organize the next event if we talk about the Hungarian presidency of the European political community on the 7th of November in the same format in Budapest. So we have got, I think, two important tracks today. One is the track of the European political developments, the formation of the new institutions, the institutional transition after the European elections, new power relations, new structures are created in the European Parliament. And on the other hand, we have got a very intensive diplomatic season relating especially the issue of war and peace, as actually not just this peace mission, but the NATO summit itself had a lot to do with war and peace as probably one of the most important elements of it. And the Hungarian presidency is in the midst of these two important developments. Obviously, the first issue I would like to address is the issue of peace and war. Is it the right time to talk about peace or not? And my answer would be to this question that now probably we don't know how the hell peace will come about. But that peace should come about should be a target for all of us. And we may not have a perfect time to start talking about it, but what are the perfect time for such a question when we don't know that how we can come close to creating peace? So we believe that the peace mission of the Prime Minister of Hungary has generated a lot of debate in the past couple of weeks. The European Commission, commissioners, heads of state and government commented upon his trip. And I think in itself, this kind of visibility which has been given to this peace mission, in a sense, it has been, just for this very reason, successful. It has generated a debate, a broad debate on the issue, and the narratives of war and peace are in the midst of the international discussions. And I think it was important. It had to be done. To go into the depth of this will be probably an interesting discussion today, how we can serve the cause of peace. I would like to make it clear that Hungary has no doubt who is responsible for the war. It is Russia. Russia is the main and the sole responsible actor behind this war, behind this bloodshed. At the same time, we also need to make it clear that we don't have the right to tell to the Ukraine what to do, how to sacrifice anything from what they have. But on the contrary, we should make clear that they have the right to full territorial integrity and sovereignty, and it is just the right of the Ukrainians to decide what kind of ceasefire and what kind of peace negotiations they are ready to accept. We don't have any intention to give them what to do. We have an opinion that probably the ceasefire and the peace negotiations should be started. It is a proposal on our side, but we don't want to pressurize into this direction neither the Ukrainians, and obviously our expectation towards the Russians is even more explicit than this advice or this proposal towards the Ukrainians. And concerning the scenario, how to come closer to this, we had the NATO summit, and the NATO summit was very important in that sense that we were able to make clear that these are the strategic targets to make responsible Russia on the one hand, and on the other hand to support the full territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Ukrainians. But obviously the details, the technical differences are the most important questions. We may have common strategic goals, but how we get closer to them, there lies the most important hidden differences. And we believe that the time is ready now to start to talk about these questions. And hopefully in the coming month, we will be able to make spectacular development into these directions. Otherwise, we may risk that even for a decade, for long years, this bloodshed will continue, what we are all experiencing. And I don't need to tell you that how many hundreds of thousands of Russian and Ukrainian victims are now in this war. I don't need to explain to you that how tragic it is that in the midst of Europe, in the beginning of the 21st century, we are confronted with such a bloodshed, and which have very dire consequences on the future of Europe, because we all see that the future of Europe is fundamentally influenced by this present conflict. So to mention to you some other elements, probably one priority I would like to name as well. We have actually quite many for the Hungarian presidency, and that is competitivity. And there we come. The competitivity of Europe is closely related to the ability to terminate the war. If we are not able to terminate the war, then the competitivity of Europe is exactly what we can forget about. So when we talk about the competitivity and when we talk about all the related economic aspects, that it is directly related to the issue of war. We can name this the quality of life as well. The quality of life for the European people, the quality of life for us in Central Europe, Hungarians and Slovaks, which is in the heart also to our neighborhood policy. Let us work together for raising the life quality of our people living in Central Europe, and that is very directly related to the Hungarian presidency priorities. I don't name now the other ones, but if there is any question which relates other priority, please let me know. Probably one element is the minority question. The minority question is part of the quality of life for the Slovak citizens, the Hungarian nationality Slovaks. And for that reason, we have got a very clear priority, that is cultural diversity and cultural heritage. Tangible and intangible cultural heritage is part of the priorities of the Hungarian presidency. We organize conferences and we have legal initiatives on the subject. We believe that it is not just states, but also national minorities are entitled to their tangible and intangible cultural heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad you both have competitiveness as one of the chief objectives of this presidency, because just this Tuesday, apparently there was an informal meeting of EU ministers over the issue of competitiveness, and many of the countries, European countries, decided to send lower-ranking officials to Budapest. The Baltics, Sweden, Finland. I don't know who else, and they meant this as a signal, as a sign of protest against the unauthorized trip of Prime Minister Orbán to Moscow. And now I'm turning to Mr. Blachowski as our impartial observer. And in your experience, can a European Union presidency be successful? Can it be successfully conducted if senior ministers decide to remain absent, or they ignore these meetings and employ some kind of soft boycott? Doesn't this hinder these objectives of competitiveness and the other plans of the presidency, in your experience?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me here to this festival. I heard a lot about it. I have many friends today here, but also in previous festivals, so I'm glad I can be here, and I can be here together with Zsolt. He mentioned that we know each other from very old times now. It's the last millennium, even. Not even century, it's the last millennium, and I used to be a participant in the Fidesz camps, young camps, because at that time we did it jointly, Fidesz and Civic Democratic Youth and Christian Democratic Youth in Slovakia, and I still consider it a very good idea that young people talk to each other in Central Europe. When it comes to EU and EU presidency, I must say that EU is facing a multi-crisis. It's actually one crisis upon another. We had the pandemics, we have a war, before that we had a financial crisis, and I think what is important is to stay together and find the solutions for the hottest issues. And we in Globsec, we actually prepared a paper with recommendations for the upcoming European Commissions from the Central European point of view. And if I would say what we should see as a three main priorities, one was already mentioned by Joel, that's competitiveness. The other one is, from my point of view, defense and the boost for a defense industry in Europe. And the third one is the EU position vis-à-vis other international actors, how to strengthen our position as an international player. And it is enormous task, and that's what should be done. And then there is the question how it should be done. Whenever I speak to young diplomats, I always use the sentence: style does matter. In diplomacy and in international relations, it's not only what you want to say; it's also how you want to say it and how you want to do it. And that's the part when I had a problem with the so-called peace mission of Prime Minister Viktor Orban. It's not that we don't want a peace. I think we all want a peace, and first of all, Ukrainians wants to have a peace. But then we have to make clear certain things, and I'm glad that Zsolt is one of the Hungarian politicians who can say it clearly, because there are others who cannot say it clearly, that Russia is an aggressor. And that's the starting point in all this. And one has to address it here in Slovakia, in Hungary, everywhere, because that's the point of departure for what one would like to see as a just peace. Because if we want a long-term peace, we need a just peace, and the just peace is in my view, when the aggressor is punished and the victim is somehow helped. And that was from the very start the approach of previous Slovak governments when we sent the military aid to Ukraine, because when you see that your neighbor is attacked by larger countries, you want to help them in that crisis situation, and there are different ways how to do it. But I think if you want to keep that nation alive, you have to help them first of all to defend themselves, because otherwise, if they lose, there is nothing to defend. So that's why I thought it's so important to have a very clear positions. And I mentioned I'm glad that you are brave enough to name it. But whenever I try to get who is an aggressor from my former colleague Peter Siarto, it was always somehow very difficult for him to say it. I don't know why, but it was always difficult. Perhaps because he made so many trips to Moscow and Minsk. So when it comes to how the so-called mission was viewed in Europe, in European Union, there are certain states in the EU who consider the war in Ukraine existential threat to them. I would say Balts, I would say Poles. It's very clear that for them it's a vital issue that Ukraine will not lose and that they will not border Russia. And you mentioned that you support territorial integrity of Ukraine, and I think it's an independence, and I see it's a key, because none of us wants to see the Russian imperialism to be successful, and none of us wants to see Russians in Uzhgorod. I think we should be clear about it, and that's the most important issue. Where we differ is perhaps how to reach it. And when is the time for talks, and when is the time to make some kind of agreement? when it comes to the peace mission as it was presented by Viktor Orban, I was very happy to see him in Kiev, to meet with President Zelensky. And when he came to Moscow and when he came to Beijing, it coincided with the fact that Hungary is EU presidency country. However, he cannot present himself as a EU president, and he said it, but he was received by Mr. Putin as a EU presidency. The president said it, and that, if I may say so undiplomatically, that pissed off some guys, not only in Brussels but in capitals. That it was presented that way, and it wasn't consulted ahead of his trip, and that's what I consider that style does matter, and it's very unfortunate because I think it creates diplomatic tensions, and there are talks about boycotting EU presidency that. I do not consider very good because and wise, because we have to move forward, and we have to move forward as a European Union, and we all have to keep in mind that what is most important is to present European Union as a solid, unified actor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would you like to react, or can we move on, please, John? Very briefly.
Okay, Balázs. I would like to respond quickly. One element is that I am very glad that Gombaszög has this dialogue character. And you are all aware that Gombaszög is 98 years old. In 2 years' time, it will be 100. And we have transported this Gombaszög spirit to Tusványos and to the summer universities in the whole Carpathian Basin. This kind of dialogue, what we are having now, Slovaks and Hungarians, is vital. And last year I was also very glad to participate in a similar meeting, because now in front of the international European, Central European community, we are facing very new type of challenges. And then reflecting on our situation is vitally important. Secondly, I would like to ask you if you know who heard about the Maria Theresia Order. Maria Theresia Order was given to military people in the history of the Habsburg Empire who were innovative, sometimes rejected to execute orders from above. But in the end, they turned out to be right. Many people call Viktor Orban a person who is not right, but who will be right. Okay, I don't want to propose Viktor Orban the Maria Theresia Order, but the Maria Theresia Order type of performance in the international community is needed. That means statesmen are needed in the international community. And where are these statesmen? And thirdly, I would like to say that the role of the EU presidency and the role of a national prime minister is two separate roles. And they can cooperate, coexist, complement each other very well. It is the task of all presidency. We are heading hundreds of EU formations, and this kind of non-partisan attitude of the EU presidency is vitally important for the success of this mission. But I don't think that the Prime Minister of Hungary needs to take any kind of permission for his actions and attitudes as a Prime Minister of Hungary. And that was recognized, for example, by Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron said that, okay, but he's a sovereign Prime Minister. He can travel to Kiev and Moscow, and he can travel to Beijing as well, and Washington, D.C., and as he will do, we are all aware. And management successfully of an EU presidency is another job, and we will need to measure that also properly. I hope we will be able to do that as well.
All right, let's address the peace trip to Moscow. Kiev, Moscow, Beijing, and then Washington, D.C. Zsolt, you have published an essay earlier this month titled "Let it be clear for all, we are not servants of Russian interest," or something along these lines. And you close that essay with the wish that you hope that Hungary will be able to restore its prestige in the Western world, since that prestige has been damaged for over the last couple of years. The Ukrainians had no prior knowledge of Prime Minister Orban's trip to Moscow. Putin hailed him. I know everything what you said about Macron was true, of course. But Putin hailed him as the representative of the European Union as a whole. And when he published pictures on his Facebook page, he even used the EU presidency's logos attached to those pictures. Jean-Michel said that PM Orban has no role in representing the European Union on an international level. Von der Leyen claimed that it was an appeasement mission instead of a peace mission. And the EU diplomacy chief Borrell has said that Prime Minister Orban has no mandate whatsoever to represent the European Union on these talks. Do you think that the Hungarian prestige is being restored with these actions? Or do you think perhaps we should do more in that regard? This is my question for you, and then I have a question for Mr. Walachowski. That don't you think that the institution of the rotating presidency being misused here by the Hungarian government? And then I would like to return to the question of how to make peace. But Zsolt, first, please.
We had statements also from Mr. Scholz, the Chancellor. I quoted Macron. Mr. Scholz said that to speak about ceasefire is a capitulatio, in front of the Russian aggression. I think this mantra, that this is to talk about peace, to talk about the ceasefire, and if it was a capitulation, it is reflecting a lot about the attitude of our contemporary Western attitudes, which believes that it is in the interest of the Ukrainians to continue this bloodshed. I have to tell you honestly that I have a very serious doubt about this. I think the more time goes, the chances of a sovereign, democratic, and European Ukraine is fading away. I am convinced that if we want to have a really sovereign and territorially integrated and European Ukraine, we don't have too much time to achieve this, because I don't see that the Ukrainian military preparedness would be equal to that of the Russian. The time frame for Russians seems to be much broader, much longer than for the Ukrainians and for the West and us. So if we are committed towards a proper Ukraine, then I think this is high time. Scholz added that this is a capitulation. The Ukrainians should be fighting until the last Ukrainian. Germany is not going to participate in any way in this conflict. We are stepping aside. We are ready to give them the appropriate money to die and to fight. This is the moral attitude of the German Chancellor today. Dear colleagues, participants of this summer university, do you support the morality of the Chancellor of Germany? Or you say that, yeah, there is something strange in this attitude. And we should mobilize our diplomatic efforts to save democratic, free, and successful Ukrainian state. And I would add, I don't want to define the conditions of this ceasefire. I don't want to define the condition. It's not our job. We don't talk about the conditions of this. But what we think is that if we want to save a democratic and peaceful and successful and European option for the Ukraine, I think the time flies very quickly.
Okay. There's another element about this, and to maybe explain why our European colleagues were not enthusiastic about it. We all draw our vision of future based on historical experiences, and in Czechoslovakia, and Slovakia was part of that state, we had a very sad experience, which is called Munich Agreement, and we all somehow remember from our history books of Lord Runciman and Prime Minister Chamberlain and his attempts to achieve the peace with a then German fascist dictator Adolf Hitler, and this is. I don't want to be naive about Russian President Vladimir Putin and his aims, and these aims doesn't seem to say, to change an inch. I mean, I would call it successful, peaceful mission if I would hear that Putin said that he's ready for some changes and he's ready for a real peace talk, but that was not a result of this particular mission. So that's what makes me doubtful, and makes doubtful my colleagues in the Baltic states and in Poland and in Czech Republic, simply as it is. And when you have colleagues who are doubtful, you don't call them warmongers. You try to talk to them first and then go abroad. And that's the part of the mission which wasn't, which didn't happen, basically. You know, that's because if I want to go abroad as a European Union presidency or European Union Prime Minister, whatever, because each of us somehow represents European Union because we are a member of the European Union. That's quite natural. I consider it to be not only polite but diplomatically wise to consult partners before such a trip, and this is the part which didn't happen from my point of view and from point of view of many of my former colleagues. So just to make it clear what is. Why people react as they react sometimes, and we have to take it in mind, and we have to adjust to it, because at the end the goal is the same. The goal is to have a peace in Europe and to make the project which we have in common, which is European Union, successful and strong. And to this end, we should adjust our efforts and our behavior. That's how I see it. So, I think we should talk a bit more about it within European Union itself. And then there is a problematic part. And the problematic part is that when you are angry on someone and you even stop to talk to him or her because you are angry, it doesn't move things very far. I think we not only have to have a proper dialogue on peace in international arena, but within ourselves. That's quite important. But then I think it's very wise to not call those people who do not trust Mr. Putin and his ability to make a peace, don't call them warmongers. Those people are just cautious and they do not trust Mr. Putin.
Thank you very much. Now, there are many historical examples when small nations actually managed to play an outsized role in international relations and diplomatic talks. For example, I think the best case and example would be the Oslo Accords, when Norwegian diplomats managed to facilitate a deal between the Israeli and Palestinian counterparts. Of course, in that case, both sides failed to adhere to the deal, but nonetheless, it is possible to actually facilitate peace. But at the same time, you need to come up with some kind of terms, right? And I feel like, you know, when it comes to these beauty pageants, every single contestant, the girls, they always say that their goal is, an objective is world peace, and everyone wants world peace. Of course, who wouldn't want world peace? But you need to actually make up some kind of terms upon which that peace can be, you know, built upon. And I feel like this is one element missing from the Hungarian proposals and the Hungarian diplomacy. Because you could say, okay, there are these 4 contested oblasts in eastern Ukraine. I don't know, why don't we bring in international actors, and why don't we organize some kind of plebiscite so people could actually decide which country they want to belong to, or something like this. Because Putin, he still claims dominion over these 4 oblasts in eastern Ukraine, and he doesn't show any intention of leaving or to cease the hostilities. So where are the terms? What terms could the Hungarian diplomacy apply to make peace in Ukraine? Or Zsolt, what is your vision for a peace in Ukraine? In quite concrete terms, if I may ask you.
Coming back to, for one moment, to the issue of peace, I would draw your attention to all of you that when we talk about the Lisbon Treaty's first statement is that the aim of the European Union is peace. When we analyze the UN founding charter, it speaks about the creation of peace and security, and then human rights and the sovereign equality of nations and the global good, public good, subordinate to peace and global security. Or when we talk about the NATO founding documents, the same. So a very shocking experience I had in the Council of Europe. I'm heading the Hungarian delegation there. When I spoke about these questions on the plenary, a communist Greek politician came up to me and started to shake my hand. Zsolt, you are fantastic. Oh, why? What happened? You are so brave. Why I'm so brave? Because you spoke about peace. You know, we are today in such a situation when a communist Greek member of parliament is coming up to you and shakes your hand because you say that we need to move forward from the present situation. And I was also glad to see that the final document of the NATO summit 75, 25th anniversary of the Hungarian membership, the 75th of NATO, the Hungarian diplomacy was successful in adding one sentence to the Russia chapter. Russia is a threat, but we need to maintain the communication channels. Have you recognized that next day, the American defense minister phoned the Russian defense minister to negotiate right after the day of the end of the NATO summit. The summit declaration is so anti-Russian that never such an anti-Russian declaration was accepted. And I need to tell you that obviously Hungary has given the signature to this document. But how can we imagine any kind of peace without communication with the Russians? How can we imagine that? One point. Thirdly, I said that we talk about the ceasefire and we talk about the peace treaty, and we are very reserved, the Hungarian diplomacy, in defining any terms of condition. The terms of condition should be defined by the Ukrainians. Obviously, there are quite evident questions which cannot be disregarded in such a negotiation. One obvious question is Crimea, Eastern Ukrainian territories. Other important question is the original Russian war aim was to prevent the Ukraine entering Western security and political structures. We all remember that. This issue of the security status of the Ukraine will definitely be part of the negotiations. Then we need to prepare for the future role of Ukraine in Europe. Some things have been decided. We have opened the negotiations with the Ukrainians. There have been a broad consensus achieved. It was a very hard process to talk about, and what kind of conditions are in relation to the negotiation process. There is a good news. The Carpathian, the Kárpátaljai Hungarians are now in a situation that they have a very important tool in their hand, that is the so-called Minority Action Plan, which has been part of the negotiation process vis-à-vis Serbia, and it relates obviously to all national minority communities, and in an environment which is quite definitely defined by the one state, the one language, the one nation, the one religion theory, which we can experience day by day in the Ukraine. These kind of elements of adopting a minority action plan in the process of the EU negotiations seems to be a very important component of the whole process. Sándor Erzsébet, I know, who is the expert of minority rights in Europe with us today. She can probably comment upon the relevance and the importance of having these. But I would like to reiterate, Balázs, that it is not our job. It is the responsibility, obviously, of Ukraine to define the red lines. What are the important red lines for a negotiation process? I was just signaling a few subjects which seem to be in the forefront, but I have not even said about these questions that what are the most important elements of my personal conviction, because it would be understood very quickly that it is in a way the position of Hungary, and Hungary shouldn't define any kind of precondition for such a negotiation process, and we are quite conscious about this. Thank you.
No, I agree. It's up to Ukrainians to define the conditions and what is acceptable for them as a start of peace negotiations. And I think they even came up with what is called Zelensky's peace plan. So I think it's already written on a paper what they consider to be the conditions for the peace, how they will how these will reconcile with the visions of Russians. That remains to be seen. And it is clear that this war is going on for too long. It's more than 2 years, and people are totally tired. And first of all, Ukrainians are tired. They bear the biggest burden of all, and but they know what is the price and what is in stake, and I think that's what makes them clear in their defending their country and its territory.
All right. Let's move away from the issue of Ukraine, because I still have 2 pages full of questions and there's a lot of us to cover. Right, Zsolt, you mentioned that you secured the admiration of a Greek communist, but you also have very friendly relation with the Slovak post-communist, and this is the next topic I would like to open. The Smer party, you might have forgot, but this is their origin. So there seems to be a newfound alliance between the Smer-led Slovak government and the Hungarian leadership. For example, for a while they blocked the 50 billion euro funding package for Ukraine together, but there are differences as well. For example, Smer did not join, in contrary to many's anticipations, the newly found European parliamentary group, the Patriots. One of the Smer members of the European Parliament claimed that the reason behind this was that there are too many far-right elements within this group. Is Prime Minister Fico Orbán's closest ally at the moment? And the reason I'm really interested in this would be that I would really like to see how the Hungarians living in Slovakia could benefit, or whether they ever get to see the fruits of these, synergies, because years of experience have taught me that, we don't actually have the most clever leaders here, we as Hungarians in Slovakia, and many of them now labor under the delusion that they also need to warm up to Fico and Smer, but their voters seems to disagree, and hence we don't actually have Hungarian representatives elected to, I don't know, the Slovak parliament, the European parliament, and so on and so on. So what benefits can we get to hope from this close alliance between Hungary and Slovakia?
And the Slovak-Hungarian relations in the last 15 years went through very different phases. The beginning was very tragic. We all remember what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010, what kind of tensions Malina Hedvig and different laws, language laws, different double citizenship laws were adopted, and gradually in the last 40 years after 2010 we experienced with different governments warming up in the relationship between the 2 countries. And I think this was a favorable process, and I don't want to name any of these because all governments played an important role. The Matovic government, the Heger government played an important role in this process. Do you remember, for example, for the fact that Nemzeti Összetartozás napja, on the day of the Hungarian 4th of June, Day of National Cohesion, Mr. Matovic invited the Hungarian politicians on the occasion of the Nemzeti Összetartozás napja. So there have been a lot of elements, important steps towards the present situation. And obviously, Slovakia has its own set of interests, and Hungary has. But we do have a lot in common. And with some interests we are sharing also with the party of Smer, the Smer party. I think there are not too many friends of Hungary in the Socialist International, so I am glad that Smer remained in the Socialist Party family, at least someone is positive towards the Hungarians in the Socialist Party in Europe. They may change, obviously. They are not non-affiliated yet. Okay. So God knows how they will decide, but probably the most important question is that how the Slovak-Hungarian relations are going to develop in the coming years. And we have very good practices. For example, the very fact that we have built 30 border crossings between our countries in the last 1.5 decades. This was a very clear ambition of the second Orban cabinet in 2010. This is a very visible, concrete and positive element in our bilateral relations. What kind of benefits the Hungarian community has from this cooperation? The relationship between the Slovakian Hungarians, the Hungarian government, and the Slovak government is a triangle. And we are interested in strengthening all the three sides of this triangle. It's not enough if the Hungarian government and the Slovak government is in good relationship. But we need to have a close cooperation between the Hungarians in Slovakia and Budapest. And we are working for a better relationship between the Slovak government and the Hungarian community. The Hungarian community, first of all, would need to create unity. You know this better than me. And we were very disappointed that finally this unity was not made. Against the very good signs in 2022, against the very good signs before in 1998, we have been able to witness that the three different wings of the Hungarian political life was united. But without an effective unity in Slovakia, it is not easy to make a spectacular development for the third corner of this triangle. You need to pull yourself together. The Hungarian community in Slovakia, high time to create a much more successful strategic visionary plan for the future. But it doesn't depend on us. I would like to tell you that this is the job of the Hungarian community in Slovakia. The Hungarian state cannot create unity among the Hungarians. I think you don't expect it from the Hungarian government, and we should make it clear that we don't intend to intervene in such a way into the internal affairs of the Hungarian community inside Slovakia.
So what's your take on the Fico-Orban bromance?
Let me have a couple of remarks on Slovak-Hungarian relations and how it should not be dependent on any relations of any individuals and any politicians, because it's much bigger. It's much more important than any relations between any leaders. Leaders will change, the Slovak and Hungarian communities will remain and will have to work together, and that's my absolutely basic approach to this. There are, of course, there is a role of personalities in historical events, and it is important. But I think what is even more important is to have good structures and good procedures which will survive any kind of storms, bad weather, good weather, which are ready to contribute to better life of people here. And when I'm speaking about Hungarian minority in Slovakia and its political leadership, I always remind myself about the situation in 1990s during the Mečiar and after Mečiar. Because that was the time when my views were formatted in many ways. I was 28 in 1998, and what I will never forget is that the Hungarian community in Slovakia was sort of an avant-garde in our efforts to become a part of the European Union and NATO at that time. And when we defeated Mečiar in 1998, and we tried to catch up in our integration efforts towards EU and NATO. The other three Visegrad countries, how would I say it, keep the chair warm for us. And I was responsible for NATO public awareness campaign in Slovakia before we entered, and one of the most successful consultations and trips at that time for me was to Hungary, when I met with Csaba Körösi, who was at that time the director of the NATO department. And look, no one remembers it now, but there was a referendum on NATO in Hungary. And Csaba was kind enough, and he gave me the whole strategy. He explained me how they did it. What was the role of media? What was the role of civil society in that? And I must tell you, a lot of it was copied in the Slovak strategy later on when I was responsible for that. And I will eternally grateful for this kind of help. So that's, for me, an example that we can help each other in many, many ways. When it comes to Robert Fico and his relations towards Hungarian minority, I think there was a learning curve and trajectory which I appreciated. On the other hand, it is important which are the issues he wants to deal with in this country, and when it comes to our current Prime Minister, Robert Fico, I would say that he would, I think it would be good for him and for his party if they would concern more about people in this country than about some ideological fights he has now, because I must say that from my point of view, there's a huge difference between the government of Robert Fico 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the difference I see is the level of competentness, how competent people are running the things. And I think it's much less competent than it was. Sorry for saying it. I think they should refocus more about the life of people and less about the ideology. That's my view.
I'm not entirely sure what do you mean by ideology. What?
We have to create a wall for liberalism and progressivism and you know, this labeling, it makes me really really angry, because I think it's not constructive. It's not focusing on real problems. Actually, it's diverting the focus on real problems to something else, and it creates tensions and not a good atmosphere for moving ahead. That's what I meant.
So we are sitting here today as Central Europeans, and the main vessel of the Central European cooperation has been for the last 20 years the V4 group, right? What is the current situation with regards to the V4 group? Because I'm asking because relations seem to have gone over the last months as well. The Czech PM reportedly said that he's skeptical about the bloc's future. And stated that any negotiations involving Prime Minister and Prime Minister Fico and Prime Minister Orbán does not make him happy. And reports also have it that the last Prime Minister level V4 meeting in Prague has descended into a shouting match whereby the Polish and the Czech counterparts questioned the Hungarian Prime Minister's warm relations with Putin, while Fico just sat there in utter silence. So to continue in reverse alphabetical order, I would first like to ask Mr. Vlachovsky that, you know, with tensions within these four countries, what role is there for the V4 bloc in shaping politics within the European Union?
I was recently asked by my Austrian friends if I would like to write an article about V4 for the new European magazine they called European Voices, and I asked them, can I write about something else? This is really difficult. It's really complex, and I mean it.
But you have to answer this question.
And I did it, and I wrote it, so it's written. I didn't shy away from this difficult task. It's true that on the political level, on the highest political level, the relationships is difficult, and it's mainly due the different views on Russian aggression on Ukraine and how to deal with it. And before I became a minister, I was a foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Eduard Heger, and I remember the meeting of V4 prime ministers in Košice, and you know, we always planned that there will be some part for meeting of the leaders alone, and then there will be plenary. There was almost no plenary in Košice because they spent so much time to clear up the things among themselves. It was useful, but still, I also remember that at that time, my prime minister asked Viktor Orban, when will you ratify the Swedish accession to NATO? And we were told that in January. It happens to be a year later. So that, yeah, probably. That was it. So it's hard to have this kind of discussions when you cannot you don't have this basic trust that the word is kept. To be very frank, so it is true that in Prague it was a heated discussion, and I think the approach is somehow they didn't came to the point that they will dissolve the V4, and I think it was a success of itself, because really the new Polish government was skeptical about V4 cooperation because of the different stances towards Ukraine. But even the leaders recognized some value of V4, and I think it's established format which has a good cooperation on a working level. We have Visegrad Fund, so whenever there are tensions on the highest level, I think we should not dismiss the whole thing as such, and we should cooperate on a lower level when it's possible. When I was young, I was told that the politics is art of possible, and we should concentrate it on what is possible. And I think there is a lot of things which are possible. And in my view, and I am frequent users of train between Prague, Bratislava, and Budapest. I must say we have a lot to do here in this region when it comes to infrastructure, for example. I mean, we are terrible in this. The time it takes you to go from Bratislava to Prague by train is the same as it was in 1930s. We should do something about it. We should be more modern, and we should catch up with Western Europe in this. So there are a lot of things we can join forces and concentrate it on that when we do not have a highest consensus on the highest political level. Of course, the highest political level consensus always help the cooperation below. But you can see in papers and in politicians' reactions that in Warsaw you can feel that they give a priority to Weimar III now, but they didn't dissolve the V4 as such. They have a V4 presidency now. In Prague there is also certain reluctance. I know that that Prime Minister Fico and his Foreign Minister Juraj Blanár, they were thinking about revitalizing V4, but I think when I spoke with Juraj Blanár, I had a tendency to believe that they stop somewhere in 2018 and completely ignore the development afterwards in their approach. So they have to adjust to new realities.
What's your take, Zsolt, on the V4 issue?
I'm sure you know the father of Miroslav, Mr. Vlahovsky, Karel Vlahovsky. He is one of the engine of the Visegrad cultural cooperation because he has translated over how many books? 80. 80 books from Hungarian into Slovak, the most important Hungarian literature. And this is the deep Visegrad. Visegrad has a surface and it has got a depth. And the deep Visegrad is strong. And this deep Visegrad cannot be destroyed. And it is able to carry the political level very easily. Mr. Fiala said that he is not happy, doesn't make him happy what he believes Visegrad is. It is not the function of Visegrad to make Mr. Fiala happy. I think the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic should go to church, probably the Protestant church, because there are a lot of Protestant priests who studied in Slovakia, in Prague, and they can speak Czech, and probably they could be useful to make him happy. But Visegrad 4 is not about making him happy, but it is about fulfilling those common interests which we are having. And if we identify the common interests, then we are able to realize them. And until now, that has given, in the history between after 1335, when the first Visegrad was established, and after 1991, when Lech Walesa and Václav Havel and József Antal has re-established Visegrad, it has been a success story. It has been able to achieve tremendous projects, and especially in the field of deep Visegrad, it will continue to do so. And if we are able to identify projects, I agree with Mr. Vlahovsky that in the field of the regional infrastructure, Visegrad has a major function. The North-South infrastructural development is a major task in our generation. We have to make it. If you look at the West European infrastructure, transport, digital or energy infrastructure, then you are shocked how far we are from that level of development. Bridges, highways, railways, high-speed internet connections, this is the most important task in front of the V4. And there has been in the past years some identifiable common interests vis-à-vis European Union. Migration. I don't see that there would be any fundamental difference in the field of migration, neither the previous governments nor the present government. And don't forget that these governments and these political systems are divided. The Polish political system is divided. On the level of the presidents, the cooperation is very smooth. And God knows what will happen in the Polish presidential elections next year. So I think we have to be to step back, to be happy that the formal institutions are operating, the parliamentary, the presidential, and the governmental level of institutions operate, and where we can identify the common interests, then we should do it. We should proceed. At least those people who are committed towards the V4 and the Visegrad cooperation, because in each country there are individuals who are committed to the cooperation and there are ones who are not. And I think we need to find those people who are committed to support and to implement the plans of this cooperation.
Thank you. Mr. Vlahovsky has actually just returned from a professional trip from Washington, D.C., where there was this NATO summit. NATO has turned 75 years old. Now the alliance is 75 years old, and perhaps you could share with us some kind of insight on where NATO is going, because with an impending second Trump presidency upon us, you know, Trump did not quit NATO during his first term, but do you think we can actually still afford to have our security outsourced to the US as NATO members? So how our relations and security within NATO would change in such a scenario? And can there be any kind of actual benefits to our Central European region if a second Trump presidency actually happens?
First of all, I would need a crystal ball to answer your questions, because there are so many things which can be this way or that way, including Donald Trump winning the presidency. It's not written. We will see. We will see in November. However, today it seems quite likely. Look, when I was traveling to NATO summit in Washington, I remind myself that actually my first NATO summit, which I ever attended, was in Washington, but it was in 1999 during the 50th anniversary of NATO, and before we joined, and that was the summit when you joined, yeah, 1999, yeah.
Polish and Hungarian.
Yeah, so very good summit for you. What has changed in these 25 years is the scope of the alliance, the international environment. We have a major war in Europe. I think between 1999 and 2014, most of the experts in NATO and generals thought that we will need mainly the expeditionary forces for wars far away. We do not have to concentrate that much about the territorial defense anymore. We are after Cold War. Well, it seems like that has changed. And what are my main takeouts from the recent summit in Washington is it confirmed the unity of alliance, which is probably the most important fact. All the countries signed the communique. The second one is we committed ourselves to help Ukraine, and we showed a clear path towards Ukraine and NATO membership, which actually was promised in 2008. And if I remember correctly, I already quoted that I wrote an article to European Voices, but the very first issue was the dialogue between former Chancellor Schussel with Prime Minister Orban, and Viktor Orban quite wisely said that if we would move after Bucharest summit in certain direction, and if we would be more bold in our actions, we could avoid this situation which we are facing now. And I have to give a credit to my Hungarian friends when I speak with them, that they often remind me of things which didn't happen in the past and should have happened in the past. One of them was the clear movement towards Ukraine and Georgia NATO membership, which we promised in 2008. The other is the energy infrastructure and the fact that there was Nabucco. Who nowadays speaks about Nabucco? Yeah, but if we would have a Nabucco, it would be a very different now. Yeah, if we would have a Nord Stream 2, if we wouldn't have built Nord Stream 2 and we would build Nabucco instead, we would be in a very different situation. which reminds me also about the situation in V4, and I must say that our Polish and our Czech friends did quite a lot in diversifying their energy infrastructure and decreasing of their dependency on Russia, which was a smart move, and they could move freely, more free than we do. There were certain things which we should analyze, which we didn't do in the past in a right way. And the third takeout from Washington summit is that we definitely have to boost the defense industry in the alliance. We cannot sit and watch how Russia is rebuilding the military industrial complex, and we are a bit too slow for that.
Zsolt, Prime Minister Orbán is now openly embracing and rooting for a second Trump presidency. What's the game here? How could Hungary benefit from Trump's return? And how could the Central European region in general benefit from a much more isolationist America than the one we currently have? So what's at stake here in your take?
First of all, concerning NATO, I would like to reiterate what Miroslav was suggesting, that NATO is a key element of the security of our region. So if we were not in NATO today, we would be in a much more vulnerable situation. Let's make this clear, that NATO is an unprecedented guarantee for the security of East Central Europe, our countries, the NATO member states. NATO is a defensive organization. And to make the defensive strategy credible, we need to maintain, one hand, unity, on the other hand, the collective defense principle, and thirdly, the deterrence capability. And we need to reiterate that deterring the aggressor is a constant task. And the Hungarian budget is now over 2%, as you know, and it's not enough. We are planning to increase it, and the industrial base needs to be developed also in order to make this ability of deterrence more credible. Concerning America, I would like to comment on the situation. What can be seen from the American elections? What are the options at the moment? And why Hungary is so explicit today? The most important reason is that we feel that America in the past years have projected weakness. President Biden demonstrates weakness day by day in the international media. President Biden was a key factor. His weakness was a key factor in the aggression of Russia against the Ukraine. If we want to overcome the weak America situation, we need to have a strong America. It is not the age what counts. 80 years old, both of them. Biden and Trump, not much age difference between the two of them. But the ability to project power, with what is crucial from America, to project power, because the American power is a key element of the global security and a key element of our security. So either it is Trump or anyone else, but we need to have a strong American president. And if they will be isolationist, how they will relate to Europe or to our region, I think it is a future question. One thing is sure, Trump is a businessman. He's not going to stand up for European interests. He will stand up for American interests. But we need to be able to influence through a bargaining process the American political life, the future American president. And that is the challenge in front of us, in front of Europe. So I believe that it is a fundamental interest to have, on the one hand, a strong America, and it is a fundamental interest to have a much stronger Europe, which is able to bargain with the Americans, with President Trump, on security, on energy, on economic relations, and so on.
Yeah, just a very quick reaction. I know that we are running out of time, but the biggest problem with President Trump is his unpredictability, and the other big problem is that this inward-looking approach, and there are among this Trumpist movement really forces which thinks America first and the rest we shall see. So it's hard to project the power when you are concentrating so much on yourself and your own business. But so I wouldn't be that harsh on President Biden as you were. But we shall see. I understand, and I have to give a credit to President Trump that he somehow reinvigorated NATO because allies certainly realized that there are also some not only rights but also some duties, and they should concentrate on better preparedness. And one thing which I completely agree with Zsolt is that Europe has to be ready to do it on its own, as much things as possible, and concentrate on itself too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vlachowski. As much as it makes my heart bleed, we have officially now run out of time, but I think I can still allow a single, quick, and very short audience question. The lady is already raising her hand. Olga, would you please come forward? Please be gentle with them.
It's not like a question, it's more like a monologue. Because first of all, I would like, 1 minute, okay. As a Ukrainian, I would like to thank all of you that you talk about this very important topic, and that you are still highlighting this and you are bringing the attention to it. But I have to correct your very important mistake that both of you made. We have war for 10 years already, not 2 years. And we were invaded in 2013 by Russians, and I think the biggest problem with the full-scale invasion which happened in 2022 is that the West and the allies did not react properly and accordingly to the invasion, which led Mr. Putin, should I call him Mr., to invade Ukraine on the full scale. I spent the last 1.5 months in Ukraine, in my hometown, and it pained me a lot to see the ruined buildings, the ruined shopping center where people have died. I slept through air raids every day, every second, every 2 hours there were air raids. We had electricity for 5 hours per day because Russians have destroyed infrastructure. And the other thing I wanted to say that I don't think it's fair that Ukrainians should die for what both Hungarians and Slovaks received for granted, which is NATO membership. This is not something that our government wants. We had 2 governments in the last 10 years. We changed the governments. This is what our nation wants. This is what Ukrainians want. We want to be part of NATO. We want to be part of Europe. We want to be part of European family because we think we belong there. And we do not care what Putin thinks about us. We are not interested that we are their sphere of interest, but we want to have an influence on our own destinies the same way as Slovaks and Hungarians do. And speaking about and what you were speaking about, Mr. Orban's, that leads me to my question, which I am not sure you will be able to respond, but when Viktor Orbán went to Moscow, it was like a stab in the back for Ukrainians. This is how we felt, because it was something that, as we were left out from the monologue, and the thing is that we all have one question. Shouldn't Viktor Orbán firstly have to come up with the plan, for example, that Mr. Zelensky had, yes, for the peace plan, and the second of all, for Ukrainian to be on the stronger position than Russian army, because we are in the war for 10 years, and we already had ceasefires, we already had all kinds of peace negotiations, and they were all violated by Russians. So I don't think that, I think that Hungary, both as Slovakia and all other members, should first come up with the plan how they secure Ukraine, and only after that we should start negotiation process. This is only what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Care to react in 2 sentences?
I will try to react in 2 sentences. I told you in my lecture that we believe that what we represent is in the fundamental interest, above all, a free, democratic, and European Ukraine. That is what we are, that is what I am working for. Secondly, I would like to underline that there are many forms, means, and ways how the international community helps your country. And the way how we help, I would like to draw your attention to a few important elements. One element is that there is an energy, electricity connection between the Ukraine and Hungary. This is the main source of electricity imported by the Ukraine. Hungary has the most important link through the European network. Secondly, I would also draw your attention to the fact that we have offered, and we intend to offer continuously, our help to the health of the Ukrainian soldiers. And not just the soldiers, but the civilians. The Hungarian medical component in the NATO cooperation is vital. And there, the possibility of continuing our humanitarian cooperation as the bloodshed is going on is vital. The Hungarian hospitals, Hungarian doctors, Hungarian medical ability is open to that, and we are doing our utmost in the field. Then the very broad field of humanitarian cooperation. But all these is just an instrument to come as close as we can to the end of the bloodshed, and you should feel and you should know that the solidarity of the Hungarian people is strong behind you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We managed to cover a very wide array of themes during this past 1.5 hours, and I really hope that you don't feel as the audience that we misuse your trust and misuse your patience by running over time. We discussed the peace mission, the deep ties between the Visegrad. We also discussed the need to visit churches for the mental health. It was a very insightful discussion. Thank you for being candid. Thank you for not holding back. And I really hope that we manage to see you here the next year as well. Thank you for the question, Olga, for bringing in the Ukrainian perspective. And I would really like to ask from you a round of applause for our guests, Joel Németh and Miroslav Vlachovsky. Thank you very much.